Here we go with silver nitrate. Let's put it into our test tube and then transfer it over to our flask. So that is silver nitrate. And we are going to combine this with hydrochloric acid. So we'll take the acid out of the bottle, put it in the test tube. We'll head on over to our flask. We'll mix them together, pour them together, and you can see that there is a white precipitate forming. So write that down, white precipitate. Our next reaction is again going to use silver nitrate. So let's pour some into our test tube. We're going to repeat this every time. We'll pour that into our flask. And now we're going to go get some barium chloride. Barium chloride. So we'll take our barium chloride, put it into our test tube, transfer that to our flask. Swirl the liquids together, and look at that. We have a solid forming. So we have another white precipitate forming here. And on to our next reaction, once again using silver nitrate. Pour that into our flask. Now we're going to go get some potassium iodide, Ki. We'll transfer that to our test tube, bring that to our flask, mix them together, and again we have another white precipitate. And our final reaction using silver nitrate. We are going to combine this with copper 2 nitrate. Put that in our test tube, carry it over, dump it into our flask, and this time nothing happened, no reaction. So now we're going to move on to our lead 2 nitrate. And once again, we'll put that into our flask, and we're going to go get some hydrochloric acid at this point. And we'll mix our hydrochloric acid with our lead 2 nitrate, and we have another white precipitate forming. So we have a reaction here. We're going to continue on with lead 2 nitrate. And this time we're going to combine with our lead 2 nitrate some barium chloride. So here goes our barium chloride into the test tube. The barium chloride gets put into our flask. And look at that, we have another white precipitate forming. So our reaction has occurred. Moving on to our next reaction, once again with the lead 2 nitrate. This time we're going to combine it with the lead 2 nitrate. We're going to combine it with a substance called potassium iodide. So the potassium iodide goes in the test tube. That goes into our flask. We mix them together, and we have another precipitate forming. This one looks a little yellow to me. But we have a reaction, we have a precipitate, we have a solid forming. On to our final one using lead 2 nitrate. This time we are going to mix it with some copper 2 nitrate. Both solutions end with a nitrate anion. So perhaps it's no surprise when we mix them together and nothing happens. We have a no reaction. Moving along here, we're going to switch to sodium hydroxide. This is a base. We're going to put it into our flask. And we're going to go back and we're going to get some hydrochloric acid. An acid and a base are going to be mixed together. Put it together, and I do not see any precipitates forming. Let's continue now with our sodium hydroxide, and there goes. Put the sodium hydroxide into the flask. This time we're going to get some barium chloride. So the barium chloride goes into the test tube, into the flask. And once again, no reaction has occurred. On to our next one using sodium hydroxide. We'll combine the basic sodium hydroxide, this time with our potassium iodide. Potassium iodide, Ki. Let's combine those two together. And no reaction has occurred again. Finishing up now with our sodium hydroxide. Let's go grab some copper 2 nitrate. And we'll mix the copper 2 nitrate and the sodium hydroxide. And we get a no reaction. On to our final one now. We're going to use potassium carbonate. Here's potassium carbonate starting off. There goes the potassium carbonate. And we are going to add that to hydrochloric acid. And it looks like we have another no reaction happening. No precipitates. There we go. So once again, we have our potassium carbonate. And we're going to mix that with our barium chloride solution. Let's get that barium chloride. Dump it in. And oh, look at that. We do, in fact, have a white precipitate forming there. That's good. Proceeding along here, let's grab our potassium carbonate yet again. Dump that into our test tube. Pour that into our flask. And this time we're going to go back and we're going to get some potassium iodide. Now both compounds have cations that were potassium, so perhaps when we put them together, it's no surprise that they don't react. There's a no reaction occurring. Almost, oh wait, and just as I was about to do the last reaction, I realized one of my chemicals I was using was wrong. Oh no, I've been grabbing a wrong bottle this whole time. I decided I would finish my last reaction and go back and see if I could figure out my mistakes using the solubility rules. So we'll grab that potassium carbonate. We'll mix that together with our copper 2 nitrate. And when we mix those two together, we get no reaction.